What happens when you open your relationship to freedom, but it leads to something darker? The idea of an open relationship can sound liberating, a way to refresh a marriage that feels stagnant, to allow for freedom without losing the bond. But what if that decision shatters everything you thought you knew? For Lena and Michael, their marriage seemed like the perfect picture of happiness. They shared laughter, mutual respect, and a deep love. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Their once perfect life was about to unravel in ways they never imagined. What started as an attempt to reignite their connection would soon spiral into betrayal, heartbreak, and a shocking confrontation that would leave them both questioning everything. This is a story of how love, once broken, can never return to the way it was. Lena and Michael had always seemed inseparable. They met in college, their connection instant, their chemistry undeniable. Over the years, their love only deepened, strengthened by shared experiences and the comfort of knowing each other inside and out. Their friends admired their relationship, often citing it as an example of true partnership. Yet as the years passed, subtle changes began to emerge. Michael, always the steady and dependable one, had become withdrawn, his passion fading under the weight of routine. Lena, on the other hand, felt a growing sense of restlessness. The love was still there, but something was missing. She longed for excitement, for something to break the monotony of their daily lives. It wasn't that Lena didn't love Michael anymore. Far from it. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to life than what they had built together. Her emotions conflicted. She felt secure, but at the same time suffocated by the predictability of their marriage. Deep down, she knew things weren't the same. But could a change truly bring them closer, or would it tear them apart? One quiet evening, over dinner, Lena brought up the topic. "What do you think about an open relationship?" The words hung in the air like a weight as Michael paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He had never expected this question. Not from her. Not from anyone. His mind raced, uncertainty flooding him. The idea was so foreign, yet there was something in Lena's eyes, something desperate, something yearning. "I just think it could bring us closer," Lena said, her voice soft but steady. "We could have freedom, but still be together. Maybe it would help us rediscover ourselves." Michael's stomach churned. The thought of Lena with someone else unsettled him deeply, yet he saw the longing in her eyes. He didn't want to lose her, but he wasn't sure if he was ready for what she was suggesting. His heart raced as he tried to find the right words, but he couldn't deny the quiet desperation in her voice. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lena nodded. "I think we need it." And despite every warning bell going off in his mind, Michael reluctantly agreed. The decision was made, but it would change everything. As the weeks went by, Lena embraced the freedom of the open relationship with a sense of liberation. She began going out more often, meeting new people, and rediscovering parts of herself that had been dormant for years. The excitement in her eyes was undeniable as she shared stories of new experiences with Michael, often coming home late and full of energy. But for Michael, things weren't as easy. Each time Lena went out, he felt a gnawing unease in his chest, a jealousy he couldn't shake. He forced himself to suppress it, telling himself that this was what they had agreed to. But it was hard to ignore how distant Lena was becoming, how independent she seemed. She was no longer the woman who leaned on him for everything. Now, she was strong, self-assured, and free. The small incidents that caused discomfort piled up. An unanswered call, an unexplained late night. But Michael told himself it was normal. This was what they had chosen. Yet deep down, the gnawing feeling of insecurity began to grow. Was Lena still the woman he had married? And what if she no longer needed him at all? One night, Michael came home early from work, hoping to surprise Lena with dinner. But when he opened the door to their home, his heart dropped into his stomach. There, in the living room, was Lena, laughing and kissing another man. The sight froze him in place, his breath catching in his throat. It took a moment for his mind to process what he was seeing. Lena, the woman he had loved for years, the woman he had trusted, was with someone else, in their home, in their space. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut, his entire world crumbling in that instant. Shock and disbelief clouded his mind as he stood there unable to move or speak. Anger soon followed, rage that burned through him, consuming every ounce of his self-control. "How could you do this?" he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena looked up, panic flashing in her eyes. "Michael, But before she could say anything else, Michael turned and stormed out. His heart shattered, his mind a whirlwind of pain and confusion. The last thing he saw before slamming the door behind him was Lena's tear-streaked face. She had already made her choice. He could no longer pretend. Everything had changed. The next day, Michael confronted Lena. The confrontation was a mixture of raw emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion. He couldn't fathom how everything had gone so wrong. "You told me you wanted freedom," Michael spat, his voice trembling with rage. "But this is more than I can handle." Lena, her eyes filled with guilt and deflection, tried to calm him. "You agreed to this, Michael. You wanted the open relationship too." But Michael could barely contain his fury. "I never agreed to this. You promised we were doing this together. I thought I could trust you." Lena shifted uneasily, trying to justify herself. "It's not like that. I never meant to hurt you. It's just... things changed, Michael." But Michael was done listening. He could see through her lies, the cracks in her excuses. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he had married, was gone, replaced by someone he barely recognized. "Don't try to spin this. I know what I saw," Michael snapped, his voice cold now. He stood facing her one last time. "You made your choice, and I'm done pretending this is something I can accept." Without another word, he walked out of the room, his heart breaking with each step he took away from the woman he thought he'd spend forever with. Michael could not shake the overwhelming feeling of betrayal. His mind was consumed with hurt, confusion, and most of all a growing desire for revenge. How could Lena do this to him, after everything they shared? The thought of simply walking away wasn't enough. He needed to make her feel the pain he had endured. Over the next few weeks, Michael's emotions turned darker. He started to secretly track Lena's movements, checking her social media, asking friends for information, even following her on some of her outings. The more he uncovered, the more disgusted he became. He learned about the multiple affairs, how Lena had hidden her trysts with other men under the guise of her freedom. The anger inside him began to simmer, but so did his plan. He didn't want to just leave her. He wanted to make sure she understood the depth of the betrayal. He began to formulate his plan to confront her, publicly, in front of their friends, in a way that would expose her for who she really was. It wasn't just about hurting her. It was about making her face the consequences of her actions. He needed her to feel what he felt, the sting of betrayal, and the crushing weight of humiliation. The night of the party arrived, and Michael knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. It was an upscale gathering, one of Lena's frequent events, where she'd flaunt her new relationship and the life she had created without him. It was the perfect setting for Michael to expose everything. As he entered the party, he took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. His eyes scanned the room until they found Lena, laughing and holding hands with her new lover. The sight sent a surge of fury through his veins, but he forced himself to remain calm. He would not let her see the storm brewing inside him just yet. Michael watched as Lena paraded around the room, enjoying the attention and admiration she received, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. The anger in his chest burned, but so did the sorrow. He had loved this woman, trusted her, and now she was acting as if everything was fine, as if he meant nothing to her. But this was his moment. He had planned every detail of his confrontation, and now it was time to execute it. His heart pounded in his chest, but he was resolute. He would expose her. He would make her feel the same humiliation he had felt when he walked in on her with another man. Michael approached Lena, who was standing by the bar, laughing with friends. He calmly walked up to her, his face neutral, but inside, everything was a raging storm. When she saw him, her smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly masked it. "Michael, I didn't expect to see you here," she said, trying to act casual, but her voice betrayed her nerves. He leaned in slightly, his voice low but sharp. "I've been watching you, Lena. I know everything." Lena froze, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" Without another word, Michael pulled out his phone, playing the videos and showing the messages he had collected, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. The room around them fell silent as people gathered, their eyes glued to the screen. The videos, the texts, the proof of her many affairs, all of it was there for everyone to see. The faces in the crowd shifted from curiosity to shock. Gasps filled the room as Lena's bravado began to crumble. The woman who had been the center of attention only moments before was now exposed, her secrets laid bare for all to witness. Lena stood motionless, unable to respond as the reality of what was happening sank in. Michael had made his point. He had done what he came to do. He had publicly humiliated her, forcing her to face the consequences of her actions. The power had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, Michael felt in control. The room was filled with whispers and stares as Michael watched Lena's breakdown unfold. She pleaded for his forgiveness, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Michael. I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she cried, her voice cracking with desperation. But Michael stood firm, his heart hardened by the years of hurt, by the betrayal that had shattered everything they built together. "No more lies, Lena," he said, his voice cold and unwavering. He turned and walked away, not looking back. Leaving her behind in that moment felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. But as he made his way through the party, he couldn't ignore the looks of judgment and sympathy from the others. There was a bittersweet taste to his revenge. He had exposed her, yes, but now the emptiness inside him returned. The satisfaction of seeing her humiliated couldn't fill the hollow space that had formed in his heart. Revenge had its price. It had cost him peace, and in its place was a feeling of emptiness. Days turned into weeks, and Michael began to heal. He threw himself into his work, focusing on his personal growth. It wasn't easy. There were moments when memories of Lena resurfaced, but he pushed through. He spent more time with friends who supported him, rediscovered hobbies he'd neglected, and found strength in solitude. Then one evening he received a message from Lena. The apology was brief, yet filled with regret. "I'm sorry for everything. I never should have hurt you like that. I hope you find happiness." By this point, Michael was no longer the same man who had once loved her so deeply. He had grown stronger, more confident, and his heart was no longer ruled by her. The message didn't affect him the way it once would have. It was too late for apologies. As Michael reflected on the journey he had been through, he realized that the greatest lesson had been learning his own worth. He had learned that dignity, self-respect, and closure were more valuable than any form of revenge. The path Michael had traveled was a painful one, filled with moments of heartbreak and anguish. But through it all, he emerged stronger and wiser. Betrayal had forced him to confront his own vulnerabilities and face the true cost of freedom. In the end, Michael understood something profound. True freedom wasn't about revenge or escaping the past. It came from within. It was about taking control of his own life, his own choices, and learning to live without the need for validation from someone else. As the story concludes, Michael's final reflection echoed in his mind. Sometimes, the hardest lessons come from the most painful betrayals. And through the darkness, he had found his way into the light. The end of one chapter was simply the beginning of another.